Howdy. Welcome to the Midwest House, everybody. Go ahead and take your seats. We've got an exciting panel for y'all this afternoon. So welcome to Rethinking A to B, the experience in between. Really have some leaders from the recreational mobility space here with me today. And we're really excited to explore how some of the trends in traditional mobility are also changing the recreational mobility space. I've got Scott, McKay, and Kaitlyn here with me today. And my name is Colleeen Konetzke. I am a principal with Iron Spring Ventures. We're an early stage venture capital firm based here in Austin, investing in the industrial space. And so during my day job, I'm investing in the future of mobility, maybe in more traditional mobility. And on the weekends, I'm an avid outdoors woman. So really excited to explore how these trends are changing recreational mobility as well. So I will have each of the panelists introduce themselves, and then would love for each of y'all to tell me a little bit about how you got into the recreational space and about your role a little bit today. McKay, will you start for us?
Absolutely, thank you. So my name is McKay Featherstone. I have the privilege of heading up innovation for THOR Industries. You've probably never heard of THOR Industries, and that's okay, because through our family of companies, we're the world's largest RV manufacturer. So brands you may have heard of like Airstream or Keystone or Jayco are represented by THOR Industries. I got into this industry about 10 years ago, similarly a love for travel, adventure, and the outdoors. And finding, at that time, Airstream, one of our companies, and just a passion for customers, a passion for supporting that lifestyle. For me, it's been a great journey, culminating here in helping create what I hope is the future, not just for Airstream in that community, but for the whole industry.
Excellent. So Scott Kuply, I'm the founder of Cabana, and we're a mobile hospitality company. And what does that mean? We basically take cargo vans, so Sprinters and Ford Transits, and we outfit them like a mobile hotel room. So everything you'd find in a hotel room, you'd find in a Cabana, and it's all contactless check-in and check-out. So we believe you should be able to put your hotel room wherever you want it. Before Cabana, I was in traditional transportation, so I worked at Lime, the scooter company, and before that I worked for mayors across the country in DC, Chicago, and Seattle, working in their transportation departments. And I got tired of transportation, and so I wanted to do a startup, and so the only thing that I could think to do was a transportation-related startup.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kaitlyn Doyle. I'm a VP at TechNexus Venture Collaborative, which is actually the linking connection between these two gentlemen here. So TechNexus is a venture capital firm, and we partner with early stage companies as well as established corporations that want to invest in more innovation and look at the innovation that's coming down their industries and really not sit idly by as it eats their business, but partner with them and collaborate there. So we build a portfolio of early stage seed, Series A, sometimes Series B companies, and then post-investment help those companies collaborate with our corporate partners, see where it can drive their business forward at the mutual benefit of obviously the startup, but the corporation as well. And then TechNexus, we have partners in a variety of different industries. We've been partners with audio corporations, fitness corporations. One of our early partners was actually a fire truck manufacturer. Our first foray into mobility was with a large marine manufacturer. So we've invested in a lot of autonomy, electrification, marine technology, outdoor recreation technology. And then about a year and a half ago, we built a relationship with THOR, a corporate partnership there. And we've been learning from them in the recreational vehicle space and building our expertise in a variety of different tech sectors to see how we can help them continue to build their innovation.
That's awesome. So we've got, really, really great crew here today to talk about the latest trends in recreational mobility. So in traditional mobility, you'll often hear about the ACES trends, right? So autonomous, connected, electric, and shared. And so those are the kind of trends that we want to talk about today, and maybe how those are seeping into recreational mobility. And so I want to start with McKay. I know electrification maybe is something that you guys have heard about, or obviously heard about, but
Yes.
been digging. I'm glad you've heard about it. Been digging into recently. I know you have a partnership with one of our portfolio companies, Harbinger, and so how have autonomy as well? How have you all, as THOR, been thinking about both autonomy and electrification as a business?
Thanks. Yeah, great question. I think to set the context for that, if you think about what is a recreational vehicle, and even kind of how that works for both of us. So I think of it as a house in a transportation vehicle. You're a hotel room in a transportation vehicle. But you still have those two dynamics because you're living in the vehicle while you're traveling, going to that destination.
Right.
So for us, autonomy is really about making that experience easier for the customer. So when we're rethinking A to B, it's really A to B to C to D. So our view is not commuting. It's all about freedom to travel and see the national parks. So really, we're a believer that that technology can take what sometimes is a large vehicle, make it easier to manage, less stressful while you're traveling. Because we know if you arrive at the campsite, wherever that is, and you feel good and refreshed and you want to enjoy the great outdoors, you're going to travel more, you're going to enjoy the lifestyle more. So there's no robo-taxis, none of those pieces of autonomy. It's all about people, and it's about making the travel experience less stressful for them so they can enjoy the outdoors when they arrive. From an electrification standpoint, we actually have one of the harder use cases because our customers, they want to go across the country, travel on the highway, so it's long distances at highway speed. That's actually pretty difficult, the amount of energy required to do that.
Yeah.
So there is a component, and it's a challenge for us that we're trying to help solve to electrify the vehicle for it to move. But what's really cool is on the house side, it's actually a lot easier. The battery systems that we're putting in vehicles today are powerful enough that you can power all of the house, and now you can go off grid. So our customers love to camp. In fact, they love it so much that it's hard to find a camp spot right now. It's really difficult, but you don't have to. They can basically go wherever they want to go with all the comforts of home, because electrification in our industry is giving them a freedom of travel because they can bring air conditioning, they can run everything in their vehicle stress-free. So it's two stages for us, but we don't have to wait for infrastructure long-term. We believe electrification right now can help customers do more comfortable with more freedom.
Yeah. Absolutely. Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think, again, I think when you think about autonomous, right, there's the robo-taxi world, which, I hope for that day, because that means that our guests can, have their Cabana pull up to their office on a Friday afternoon. They can overnight to Yellowstone and sleep while they're driving, and then do the same thing Sunday night when they're returning home. But between now and then, I would say 90% of the damage, 99% of the damage that happens to our vehicles is a single vehicle collision, because it's a lot of people that have never driven this large a vehicle. Yeah. And it's two types of crashes are 80% of the crashes. So high roof damage when they go through drive-throughs or parking garages, and then driver's side, damage on the driver's side when they try to take too tight a turn. So anything that we can do that makes those vehicles easier to use, I think will benefit the customer and frankly us as well, because our vehicles will stay on the road more. And then I think in terms of the connected side, like our entire business is based on being connected. So our premise is that you should be able to do everything within an app. So you check in, check out via app. You shouldn't have to stand through or sit through a 30-minute or hour-long walkthrough of how to use the vehicle. You should be able to kind of consume it as you need it within the app.
Yep. And
then because we have 70% of our guests have never used a camper van or an RV, and another 27% have used it once or twice in their life. Our ability to have sensors that are then connected to our back end is kind of the holy grail, so that if we see a guest that's 1,000 miles away that's running out of fuel, or is filled up their water tanks or black water tanks too much, the ability to kind of like direct them where they need to go and kind of monitor the systems on the road, I think will yield a much better customer experience for us.
Yeah.
And then that remote check-in and check-out is critical as well.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So it sounds like you all are definitely thinking about being connected, definitely thinking about electrification, and shared more on the Cabana side. It seems like, though, maybe not the goal should not be to talk about autonomy, but maybe independence, right? It seems like your companies help folks, maybe independence is probably one of the bigger themes in recreational mobility, right? Because one of the bigger differences in recreational mobility is that you're enjoying point A to point B, to McKay's point, right? You're not versus traditional mobility. So would you say, I guess, yeah, independence from the grid is really, really important to your customers?
Yeah, I think so. I think about, our vans as more of like a tool that is allowing people to experience something. So what our guests want is they want an experience, right? Like they want to be at a music festival, or they want to be, have a beautiful backdrop to their campsite. What they don't want to do is think about how things work, right? And so anything that we can do that ironically causes our product to fade into the background, the better, right? Because it's really about what they're experiencing.
Yeah. Did you have something you wanted to add?
I fully agree that, 100%. That idea of people want to make memories. The vehicle is a way of enabling that lifestyle overall. And we firmly believe that the technology is there, not for the sake of technology, but it can make that easier. We can help enable that. And in some ways, it can actually inspire them to do more and travel more. So 100%. And for me, from a design standpoint, that's the right place to start, especially there's a lot of cool technology and a lot of interesting new use cases here. But that foundation and in our industries, passionate customers, they're really open, they want to collaborate with you. And so it's a joy to have a really strong community that you can work with to find out how do you actually enable that? How can technology help you have a better experience?
That's incredible. So, Kaitlyn, I'm curious, as an investor in the space, besides some of the trends that we've talked about, what are some of the other trends that you're overall seeing in recreational mobility? And Scott and McKay, feel free to add on.
Yeah, this is where TechNexus's background is interesting because we do invest in so many different industries that we're not coming from just a mobility lens, right? Yeah. Technology has advanced so much through the advancement of the iPhone, the advancement of technology in your home, the advancement of connectivity. You spoke about sensors and the Internet of Things. IoT has seen humongous advancements in the last 5 to 10 years. And the expectation now, with your RV really being your home, is that the technology in the RV is the same as the technology elsewhere in your life, right? It's just as good as Siri on your phone or Alexa in your home, and being able to have that connectivity and that access is really important. So I think Internet of Things is definitely a trend that we're seeing continue into recreational mobility, having sensors all over the vehicle so you have a sense of what's working well, what's not working well, what might fail, how do you do preventative maintenance instead of post-maintenance. That's certainly one thing. And then another thing that is actually an interesting intersection of multiple themes that TechNexus invests in is voice control. So I'll give one example. TechNexus is an investor in a company called Native Voice, which we invested in through a collaboration with our audio partner. They are a collaborator and really a conglomerate of voice control technology. So think of Siri and Alexa that I already mentioned. They really enable brands to consider similar voice technology. So when THOR came to us, we said, this is a really interesting audio use case that you can use that maybe wasn't necessarily recreational vehicle first, but can improve the experience of your customer, because they can say, hey, THOR, find me the next gas station. Hey, THOR, find me the next charging station, whatever that may be. And it really makes it feel more like it's your home versus you're out of your home. You don't have those technological comforts that you're so used to. So those are a couple that we've seen from other industries that are really kind of becoming more and more pervasive and expected in RVs as well.
I love that. It's a technology that's making recreational mobility feel more like your home. Are there any other examples, Scott and McKay, you can think of that maybe specific technologies for folks in the audience that may not have used a type of vehicle that you guys provide, right? Maybe some technologies they may see in their home that make you guys more approachable.
Absolutely. And for me, and I think you used the word trend, but when I get most excited is if there's a technology that is meeting a basic human need.
Yep.
So our industry, our oldest company, Airstream's been around 92 years.
Wow.
And so the idea of adventure and freedom and exploration, that's nothing new. But one new technology that's enabling that is connectivity.
Yep.
So we find that is, in some ways, the number one pain point for customers is when you're traveling, you still do actually want to stay connected. It's this interesting balance of you want to go off the grid, you want to go to that beautiful place,
right,
but still, whether you're posting or checking on the grandkids, the connectivity is a desire for those customers, and they want to go where there aren't any cell towers, right? So the places they're going is where traditionally there is not connectivity.
Yeah.
So we actually announced just recently through Starlink as being the first manufacturer to integrate Starlink directly into our vehicles, because Starlink actually works best where there aren't people, where there's not a lot of people on the network. So you can go out on the mountaintop in a beautiful location, you can work remotely, you can connect with your family, and have that comfort of home with you. So that, we're just starting, I think, on that part of the journey, addressing that pain point, giving people more freedom so they can stay out longer and go on more trips. So connectivity for us it's a big trend right now that we think is living into this basic need for our customers.
Yeah.
And for us, I think of it like almost like there's like a Maslow's hierarchy of recreation. And so for us, it's, first, like, is there a vehicle, right? Like, that's the base. And then, like, slightly above that is, like, can we make it super familiar and easy to use? So, like, when you're going into a hotel room, there's not, like, an instruction manual on how to use the toilet or how to turn on the thermostat, right? It's just, like, it's very intuitive and easy. And so that is a big priority from us, for us, from, like, kind of the device and kind of hardware side of the technology. But I think what's really been great about having TechNexus as an investor is they're building like an entire ecosystem of portfolio companies that are tackling different parts of that hierarchy.
Yeah.
So once you get the vehicle, the next hardest thing is, okay, well, where do I find a campsite? I've never done this before. And so there's companies that are emerging that are doing that. And then once you figure out, like, where are you staying, then it's like, okay, well, what am I doing? And you guys have invested in a company called Captain Experiences, which is like kind of like a marketplace for people that want to do kind of like sport fishing, as an example. So there's all these different companies that are emerging to make this ecosystem just like easier to use for lay people.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as recreational mobility is becoming more connected, it's becoming more and more like our experience at home, and maybe taking some of the technology maybe from traditional mobility or, our lives at home. I'm curious if you guys think, are there any maybe areas where recreational mobility is leading the way in terms of innovation, maybe new trends in recreational mobility where you feel like they're really leading rather than adopting trends from a different space?
I think there's two that come to mind immediately for me. Connectivity is definitely the first one, because remote places, connectivity is a different challenge than it is when you're in the middle of a city. So that is a huge one. I think the trends that are adopted for recreational mobility will have humongous impacts in other industries as well, because that technology can be adapted. Yep. The second one that we haven't really touched on directly yet is sustainability. Traditionally, both of your customers are outdoor enthusiasts, right? That's probably not a shocking statement to anybody. And stereotypically, they also care about the environment. And so I think there is oftentimes consumer pressure that they're spending so much time outdoors and so much time in the environment that they want to know that their actions, and more importantly, the actions of the companies that they are customers of, are not negatively contributing to the environment. So I think there's been a big push in Electrification is, of course, one. Sustainable fueling. We talk a lot about the RV life cycle and how long the machine can survive, and then what is done at the end of the life stage. Can it be repurposed? Can it be recycled? Can it be sold for parts? So I think that's another area where we'll see recreational mobility and recreation in general kind of lead some of the trends and pressure on sustainability to get things more advanced more quickly.
That's awesome.
Absolutely agree with that, and maybe a couple of examples to bring that to life. And the framework we use, from a sustainability standpoint, there's a lot that happens at the factory, on the road, and at the campsite. As an example, on the road, a big focus for us on aerodynamics. That, again, long distances on the road, it's important to reduce that carbon footprint. So as THOR Industries and with leading companies, you're seeing enhancement in aerodynamics for those vehicles. You might even see it in going down the road. You see a big fifth wheel or travel trailer, they may be an aerodynamic front on that vehicle, different than it happened 10 years ago. So we're a believer that that's a way that we can just improve. There's no downside. It's actually less fuel, so it's saving money, better for the environment. The other example that's been a large focus for us is solar, as we were talking about earlier. We've been shipping solar on our vehicles for many, many years now, and actually integrating that into the power systems. So it's fun to see that's just coming along. You're starting to see a little bit in automotive. It's certainly growing from a home standpoint, but that's been part of enabling the freedom for our customers, but also making that more sustainable, because you're not pulling energy from any type of grid at that point. You're literally being powered by sunshine. And so we've gone from, at one point 100 watts or 50 watts, that was solar, up to you're starting to see, a kilowatt of power on top of the vehicle. So I'm excited about that going forward, that technology is allowing us to even change what can solar do, not just maintaining your battery. You can actually be powered by the electricity coming in from solar and being stored by the batteries on the vehicle.
I think for us, or I might look at it from maybe a consumer behavior lens. So we have, one of our pitches that we would make to you as an investor is that we have this incredibly resilient customer base, because people are going to want to travel locally, and they're also going to want to fly in from different locations. And so we're a form of lodging that basically serves everybody. But one of the biggest parts of somebody's carbon footprint is flying. Yeah. And so if we can build a product that allows people to have, the experience or the ability to kind of like disconnect from their day-to-day life without the need to go jump on an airplane, I think that's how I would see us kind of like driving and leading on the sustainability side. Yeah. And then also as soon as EV RVs and camper vans are readily available, we will be a buyer, because it's one of the number one things our customers ask for.
Yeah, I love that. So we keep coming back to this theme of independence, and McKay, you talking about solar. I'm a bit of an energy nerd myself, and so obviously geek out a little bit about the solar part. Before we move on from that point, I'd love to hear Scott and McKay, you both opine a little more about how demand for energy independence and solar has impacted your businesses, and how you're thinking about solar and energy independence, for your vehicles going forward.
I think the simple answer in this area is more is better.
Yeah.
Straight up. And we've seen consumer demand for it, which is, I think, really the interesting part. That this is not anyone pushing solar. This is customers that see the benefit of it. So I would say at this point, the majority of our companies have significant upgrades where you can buy a package for solar and batteries that's going to help you be more independent and less reliant on the infrastructure. Yeah. So it's no longer small early adoption. It's large percentages of customers that are integrating that into the vehicle. So the challenge for us, you get to these break points where, again, first it's just maintaining the batteries. So it's less stress for you of worrying about your battery draining. Now we're getting to the point where these solar packages can actually run live systems. Yep. So it's reducing the need for a generator, which is reducing the pollution that would come along with a generator. Yep. And really trying to just push the envelope of, through innovation, through finding creative ways to integrate more solar onto the vehicles. How can we just move more loads off of the grid over to solar? And that's the journey we're on, but it's a journey and it'll continue for years.
Yeah.
And more is definitely better. So whether it's more battery power, more solar on the top of the vehicle, or the ability to like draw more power into the battery as you're driving and charging, and it's frankly like quite pragmatic for us. So when you're out as a traveler and you have something go wrong with your system because maybe you ran out of power, right? Mm-hmm. Suddenly your heating doesn't work, your water pump doesn't work, all your systems stop working, and you might be in a place where you don't have cell phone coverage or things like that. So for us, that ability to have more, right? Mm-hmm. And then the ability to have it be more reliable is like, frankly, just a customer service issue.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we spent a lot of time talking about connectivity, electric energy, like having independence on the road, right? Outside of these ACES trends that we've talked about, and I want to start with Kaitlyn here. Curious what other trends in recreational mobility you're seeing that are maybe being impacted by a changing economic environment, changing demographics, et cetera.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. I think change is the key word here. Mm-hmm. The last 3 years have been a doozy for a variety of industries, and I think outdoor recreation is no exception there. Customer demands are very much changing. The type of customer that these brands are targeting are changing as well. And so what we've seen on our end, just starting with that, is that customer feedback is increasingly important. And a lot of these manufacturers, they really yearn that customer feedback, however they can get it, whether it's through their dealers, whether it's through reviews online. We actually invest in a decent amount of direct-to-consumer brands because those companies can get that feedback pretty quickly, and they understand, they have boots on the ground, they talk to their customers, they get the demand for solar, the demand for independence, the demand for connectivity. So that's definitely a huge trend that we're seeing. With changing demographics, I think, you can read whatever you want about Gen Z and millennials. You'll read a lot about their craving experiences over huge purchases, right? You'll read a lot about their financial situation. I think those are becoming more of a core target customer for recreational mobility vehicles. But the reality is, a lot of these recreational mobility vehicles are a large purchase, right? A 26-year-old is not necessarily going to have the finances available to buy a boat or buy an RV or do something in between. So I think that's where we start to get into the shared economy. Peer-to-peer rentals are very big. Scott can give you all the data he has about trying before you buy as well, of renting and how that can ultimately convert into a sale. So those are some of the ones that we're seeing, really early stage with some of the younger demographics that are becoming more prominent customers.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I think on the travel side, like the trend towards experiences is like, that's undeniable. That's all of our guests are looking for that. What I also think is interesting in that is that there's people that I think it's like a synthesis or a fusion where, like I might take a business trip, but then I want to tack on some leisure to it. So one of our guests, who I was talking to a couple weeks ago, had gone to a mobility conference in San Francisco and then used it as a chance to take a road trip to LA, right? So they rented a Cabana, they stayed in downtown San Francisco, and then they drove down the coast. So I think that kind of like combination of activity, and we have a lot of that where people will want to go to a small town, but then also get out into nature. Yeah. And then the other thing is on the labor side. So I think a lot of people, maybe they want to work remotely, so they'll take a Cabana out and they'll work remotely for a little bit and then do some recreation. We have employees do that. One of our first head of marketing left so that she and her partner could go kind of do van life all over the U.S. It's like, okay, that's wonderful. Not great for an early stage startup, so it's wonderful for her. But and then I think we just unveiled this this franchise program, which is how we see ourselves growing, like in this very asset light way. And we have had in like 3 weeks about 90 people sign up to own and operate about 600 vans.
Wow.
And really, it's a lot of people that they're cobbling together kind of like part-time roles, and they want to be their own boss, and they want something that's super flexible. And so they're viewing this as a way to, you know, kind of augment their income or create some financial independence. And I'm really waiting for that first person that can come in and say, well, I really want to take, you know, summers in Phoenix and winters in Missoula, where you have like a small business that rolls with you wherever you want to live.
Sounds great.
And we are all like, I am totally game for doing that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other trends that you're seeing, McKay, that you want to add on?
Yeah, touching on one of we've talked about the generational trends and how they're impacting our industry. A big one for me is simply the rising customer expectation for intuitiveness, purposefulness, sustainability, quality, et cetera. There was a time in our industry where tinkering was a thing. People enjoyed it. Oh yeah, we don't have to tinker with a few things, and that's part of the experience. That's not the new customers coming into the industry. So whether that's about digital help tools, like you were saying, to help things be more intuitive, or just the whole process that you go through from start to finish, it's a real challenge for our industry to rise to that challenge with the increasing expectations of our new customers.
Awesome. So, and I think we'd be remiss if we maybe didn't talk about some of the big drivers behind some of these trends, especially in recreation. I'd be really curious to hear you guys opine on, you know, how has the pandemic affected demand for your products, for your services, and how has the pandemic changed the way that people see recreational mobility? You know, we've talked about sustainability a lot, right? I think between recognizing how much of a carbon footprint flying can have, and during the pandemic, flying may have become a lot less attractive for some people. And so I'd be curious to hear, how the pandemic has affected your businesses.
So this is a common. So was COVID a headwind or a tailwind? And I think it's interesting. I would say, like, by and large, somewhat of a headwind. So definitely a lot of people kind of wanted to do a camper van trip or a van trip, and get out to nature, and they didn't want to fly. But at the same time, every time there was a spike in COVID, you could see it in our rentals. My suspicion is that's probably different than what you all experienced. And then the other was just around supply chain. So it made, so even when demand was going through the roof, everything in the supply chain made it really hard to satisfy that demand. And so it's great to get a lot of visibility, and when we weren't having outbreaks, really, really strong demand, but, you know, not 100% a tailwind.
Interesting.
Yeah, definitely the opposite for us. Although I do want to say, I love that you said you want to hear us opine about that. I won't go quite to opine, but the exact opposite. But I think coming from the same fundamental human driver, this idea of people want to be outdoors, but they need a space at that time they can feel safe in.
Right.
It's their own, and so that dynamic for us clearly played into purchasing of new vehicles, so people could actually get out and escape some of the confinement that came along with that. The exciting thing for us is getting new customers coming into the experience, trying it for the first time, falling in love with it, but it was a huge driver for our business, and so we had the exact opposite. If there was a spike, you know, we saw that translate into sales. Our challenge now, of course, is to keep those customers into the life cycle, into that lifestyle, because what we found is, you know, which is great, customers, they love to do this, right? Once you do it and you enjoy it, you come back and do it again. For us, on average, that means purchasing about 4 different vehicles through that life cycle. So it's an exciting opportunity that the pandemic, thank goodness, is gone, and so our sales have come back down. But there's an opportunity to keep people in the lifestyle and to build that business long-term over time. So not just once and gone, but having that lifestyle sustained at a higher level.
It's interesting, too, if you think about other
outside of recreational vehicle trends that the pandemic has enabled, remote work is a huge one.
Yeah.
You've already talked about one of your employees kind of using van life. There's a lot of people that do that and continue to work for the company. So it opens up to a different type of customer, a different type of lifestyle that people have kind of reprioritized in light of changes in the workforce and changes in really their work-life balance and kind of how they see themselves wanting to live their lives with, maybe not having to go in an office every single day.
I think that trend of like people reprioritizing is definitely happening. So, pre-pandemic, about a third of all of the vacation days in the U.S. went unused. So
Wow.
people like didn't want to get away from work, or they couldn't get away from work, or it became harder to or it was hard to coordinate your travel plans with your partner, or you didn't want to go into the airport. So to me, when I look at like what our opportunity is, it's like in the post-pandemic world, it's like that's 160 million nights. Or no, it's 800 million nights. And if you convert them all to hotels or cabanas, it's $160 billion of hotel spending or or lodging spending.
Yeah. That's wild. So, in thinking about maybe effects from the pandemic, what may stay, I mean, a lot of folks are headed back into the office, but it seems like remote work in some form is going to stay. What other trends that may affect you do you see staying from the pandemic and this big change that we had?
An interesting one. I don't know if this is necessary from the pandemic, but I think we'd be remiss to not mention, too, over the last several years, the impact of social media on some of this.
Yeah.
If you look at a Cabana van and Cabana's Instagram influence, I mean, they are cool. I think there's a semblance, too, of sharing your experience and sharing your journey and having all your followers see what you're doing.
Yeah.
So certainly existed before the pandemic, but I think there's kind of a resurgence and a growth there of creating the sense of FOMO and creating the sense of like the life that I am living and having everybody else see that. So I think Instagram has been huge there. TikTok has been huge there. A lot of the brands in outdoor recreation and mobility that we invest in have a humongous brand component and a really interesting sales channel of kind of that influencer peer-to-peer sales, because you're going to trust somebody that you've seen try out a Cabana or bought an Airstream. That's just a little bit more, relatable than seeing a brand marketing that you may or may not trust.
Yeah.
So not necessarily pandemic driven, but definitely something that is a huge influence in this market as well.
I mean, I first heard about Cabana because a friend of mine went in a Cabana and posted about it on Instagram. So definitely can speak to that. Cool. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time together, and I want to give the audience a chance to ask questions. But I guess before we wrap up, what is maybe one thing you want the audience to know about recreation and mobility? Maybe somebody who hasn't tried it before, hasn't tried an RV before or a Cabana van before. What would you want that person to know?
Our website is cabana.life. Very easy to book, very easy to use. Everything is contactless, and we're in 4 different cities. So try it and then buy one.
Thank you. Exactly. It's like, try it. I think through the pandemic that people have fallen in love again with the great outdoors at a national scale. I mean, look at the backlog of trying to get into the national parks and how many people are visiting. They've fallen in love with it again. And so a lot of the theme, we talked about freedom, but I think one of the themes that came through for me as well is knocking down these barriers. People want to go do it. They're inspired by what they see through social media. And it's not that hard. You just get out there and do it.
Yeah, I think intimidation is a factor that comes to my mind. It can be intimidating. And I think like the underlying theme of a lot of this is that there's been a lot of work in the industry to not make it intimidating, to make it very user-friendly, to make it very independent. So I think those are 2 things. The immediate thought that came to my mind is it's not roughing it. There are luxury accommodations that are in recreational mobility. So I think my 5-10 years ago stereotype of kind of sleeping in a van down by the river is very much not the current state.
No, absolutely. Well, cool. Well, Thank you, guys. With that, I would like to open it up to the audience for questions. Yes, we've got a runner right here.
Hi, this question is for Scott. I'm with Mobility Data, the Director of Partnerships there. Mobility Data is the international standards body that builds, maintains, and governs the data used for journey planning, both in transit and shared mobility. So I was curious with your business model, if you are using a proprietary system for people to discover and plan and pay, or have you considered open source software? It seems that enabling other apps to find, access, and utilize your information would exponentially expand your reach. So I'm curious what you're doing now.
Is this still, okay? So we built all of our technology, like our software in-house, but we're using kind of like off-the-shelf IoT devices. So I think whatever they're using, we can export. I think, in terms of exporting, like sharing our data open source, like for specific customers, I would be somewhat reticent to do that because there are people that are going to be sleeping in our vehicles, and so there's a consumer safety element to that. But to your point about understood. I think the open source where it really, I think, would unlock users or make it easier for people to travel in this way is really more on the campsite side. It's a very fragmented industry. And so so for us, like our holy grail would be, you could find a campsite, throw it all in a market basket for each night, and then hit book, and you have one transaction. That is, there's nothing out there today that allows you to do that. So that's where I think like the open data would really be, and like an open standard would be super helpful.
Hello. So you mentioned the accelerating demand, how parks are being booked out, how franchise interest is growing. I'm interested to hear if your industry is considering rethinking the A to B in terms of how you toe the line of being responsible in terms of local communities you're going into, as well as nature. Because I've worked in the hospitality business, and that's a struggle, especially in remote locations. How do you grow demands, but also know when to stop so you don't ruin the things that people are going out there for?
That's a great question. And so completely agree. And I think in this instance, I'll speak for our community of travelers as well, that it is a generational experience. So we have people that grew up doing this, or they remember with their grandparents. So there really is an appreciation for the exact point that you mentioned. And so as an example, there's a program that I'm going to look at. It's Keep It Beautiful, correct? Because the gentleman is nodding at me here. Thank you. To sponsor local groups to do exactly that. So as a corporate entity, to sponsor groups who have that exact mission, because no one wants to show up at a dirty campground or leave it in a state that's worse than when they came in. So there's a lot of traveling going on, but we completely agree with you that we should be enabling the community. We have a responsibility to help with that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I think one of the things that I think got brought up here and is kind of a recurring theme here is also how far in advance people need to plan and how many campsites get booked up really early. So I think, one of the things that I think we haven't necessarily done as well as we could have as a country is really invest in public lands so that there's more of them so that people can use them without kind of overwhelming individual places. We're a Series A startup. We don't have a giant government relations shop in Washington, D.C., but to me, that's what the signal is telling us, which is there's not enough places to recreate.
Any more questions?
For McKay, portion you made an announcement that's got all of us who want to go a more RV, EV experience. Is that just a design concept, or you do plan to bring that to market? And if so, could you tell me now how much, so I know I won't be able to afford it?
So referring to the collaboration launch between Airstream and Porsche Design, I'll do a quick background on that. You know, the thesis for that concept was a lot of what we've talked about here today. So better aerodynamics and much better aerodynamics so you can travel more sustainably, go further, but still take all the comforts of home. So a lot of space packaging fit into a tight aerodynamic shell, and hopefully beautiful, which for me in my time at Airstream, that was actually the product inspiring the journey. So not just social media, but like a beautiful object that you get to take with you. There's some inspiration there. So I loved working with Porsche and being able to push that next step of hopefully inspiring people to do just that. So it was launched as a concept. And as Bob Wheeler, the CEO of Airstream said, maybe. So it's not a no. And I worked for Bob for a number of years, so maybe means maybe. But a lot of that is like, kind of back to you, is it's the response here. So one reason as a brand to put a concept out into the world is to gauge the reaction. The more people that ask those questions, the more likely it is to go into production overall. So I love that you ask it, and yeah, keep on track, and let's all see where it goes.
Any more questions from the audience? Oh, down here.
I'd like to piggyback off your question. To me, it seems the electrification of cars is just a matter of time. What sort of time frame do you see for the electrification of RVs? Can I press you on that a little bit?
Yes, and there's a few different levels to that. So electrification of the vehicle. First, the majority of an RV, kind of when we say RV, it's all recreational vehicles. So it could be a pop-up camp tent, a fifth wheel, a motorhome. So in the U.S., really the strong majority of vehicles are trailers. So that question is, what's the thing towing the trailer in front of it? And it really becomes the trend of, as obviously the F-150 Lightnings and Rivians, but it's nothing new. It goes back to the Model X launch from Tesla was the first electric vehicle to tow. And so not something new, but we're absolutely conscious that we need to be the best partner to that tow vehicle so that our customers can still have the freedom that they need in the future. Again, you can EV tow today, just put it on the hitch. The question is, how far are you going to go? And so for us, aerodynamics, weight, and an electrified powertrain, so actually motive power to move that trailer along under its power are kind of the key focus areas. So starting now, accelerating, and we expect it to follow, in that instance, to follow the trend that's happening with the larger electrified vehicles. And we as an industry are making sure we're a good partner by focusing on, aerodynamics can take you up to a certain point. I think it's good on any vehicle, but at a certain mass, at a certain size, it won't get you the range you want. And that's why we've been working on a powertrain in a vehicle as well, so you can keep the distance. On the motorhome side, different challenge. So most of the motorized vehicles, and similar to Cabana, they're built from a chassis that comes from another company, might be Mercedes or Ford or Ram, like you mentioned. And so that's really just starting, but there will be vehicles that have enough range to go on a long Cabana trip or to go on a decent RV trip coming in the next couple of years, we believe. So right now you can only go 100 and some miles, but it's not too far away that first number becomes a 2. And now we feel like that electrified adventure starts to become something that's really possible.
Any more questions from the audience?
All right, this one's for all of you. What's your favorite place that you've camped? Wrap it up there.
I will have to say Tuck and Robin Lakes in the Central Cascades. I don't know if you've been there, Scott, but.
I guess I'll go next. Ross Lake up in the North Cascades.
Western shore of Michigan, beaches, dunes, just that entire coast is absolutely beautiful and a fun place to camp.
I was actually going to say Michigan as well for sentimental reasons. I've been going up to Michigan with my grandparents since I was 2 or 3. So we used to do Crystal Lake, Michigan, and that's a very sentimental place for me.
Well, I've definitely got some new places to visit now. Any more questions from the audience? I think I saw one more.
Just going back to one of the earlier points that were made around the customer, right? So I think there's a bit of a barrier to entry to try out fans renting for the first time, going off the grid. And I actually used Cabana about 3 weekends ago, so it's coming from a place of experience. How do you kind of envision getting past that first trip and really building customer stickiness, right? So after your first trip, really enticing a customer to come back and try a new city, try a new experience, and like spread that with new friends.
I would love if my product and software team could hear this question because it's something that we like work on all the time. To me, what I would love to be able to do is as soon as you've finished your trip, we, as you're closing it out, we offer you another one. Like, hey, book now. Here's another 3-day, 5-day, or 7-day trip. It's something totally new. You book that. And then over time, we build a profile of the types of experiences you've needed, and we just give you the easy button of like, oh, you've got 3 days coming up on your calendar. Here's a great experience for you to have that's totally different, or it's just the same as the one you liked last time.
Any more folks in the audience have anything they want to ask? Well, thank y'all so much for coming out today. I guess if I had to wrap this up, I would say that recreational mobility has become a lot more connected and electric, and it certainly is not roughing it in a van. And so I'm excited to give it a shot, and I've got some new places to visit as well. So thank y'all for coming out today.